Summit, the IATA Annual General Meeting 2025 in Delhi after 42 years, and the mood is cautiously optimistic. IATA has revised its 2025 outlook, so the global aviation industry is expected to post $36 billion in profits in 2025, which is much higher than $32 billion that it posted in 2024, but it is less than what IATA projected as $36.6 billion earlier. The key concern is on aircraft deliveries. IATA is expecting only 1692 aircraft to be delivered in 2025. That's 26% lower than what IATA expected last year. 17,000 aircraft in the backlog, with some airline customers looking at a waiting period of 14 years. We spoke to IATA Chief Economist Marie Thomsen, and she's very positive about India. She said India is a shining example to the world of how aviation can be used as a growth multiplier. But she also sounded an alarm, saying that aircraft deliveries are not just hurting airlines, but are also curtailing economic growth.
It's not just a question of our share of GDP. It's also a question of how much our industry can improve other industries' share. That's where we have a multiplier effect that I think is unique among industries. And clearly, this is being expressed in India's economic policies, India's drive to develop more airports and use this
Aviation boom, airlines placing large orders, the travel demand booming, has happened in the last few years. How is IATA seeing this?
Well, we think that for sure this will cement India's position as the third aviation market, and I think India will rival China in terms of being the second aviation market. And there are, of course, geographical aspects that work in India's favor. It's a large country with a large population, a population that has now surpassed China's population in numbers. So that also suggests this growth potential in the Indian domestic market. And if we look at the US by comparison, much smaller but still a large domestic market, yeah, we see the same thing, that air transportation systems that have the benefit of a large domestic market tend to do really well.
How much time will it take for India to surpass China's aviation industry? Because they are too large. They are, I think there are 4,000 aircraft totally in China. And so how much road does India have to cover to reach there?
Yes, I can't unfortunately give you a year prediction, but I do think that pursuing this policy will keep India at the forefront, in the top three of global aviation markets, and that is, not only good for India, it's good for the rest of the world as well. So we are grateful to the Indian government for this enlightened economic policy. I believe that if countries all across the world were to understand that this is a top-level governmental growth and economic development strategy and not a small industrial policy strategy, then we get the right policies. If we get those policies, then that will accelerate the advancement of the Indian air transport market.
Talking about Indian airlines placing large orders, orders have been placed, but as IATA says, manufacturers are letting airlines down, and the projection that IATA has for 2025 has also been lowered to over 1,600 planes. So how many of those 1,600 planes are likely to come to India?
I wish I had that number available for you. I don't really, I'm afraid. But that's clearly a problem for the whole global air transportation industry, that we are not getting the airplanes that were ordered previously. There's a historically large backlog of planes, and the longest waiting times ever, and this is capping, our capacity to serve not only the passengers and the cargo clients of our industry directly, but also the wider economy.
Emirates President Sir Tim Clark did not mince words, speaking on the restrictions on the India-UAE seat capacity. He said that the restrictions currently are suppressing demand, and which is what is keeping airfares much higher. And he's urging the Indian government to deploy more seats on the India-UAE routes. Speaking on the capacity crunch, he says Emirates could be twice the size of what it is currently if not for the current aircraft delivery delays. And he also added that it is not cost but capacity shortage that is hurting airlines.
Surprisingly, and I speak not only for Emirates but the airline group as a whole, apart from the North American and Canadian situation, demand is very strong. Given the difficulties, socioeconomic, geopolitical, etc. But demand for travel is as strong as it was this time last year and the year before. So I'm kind of fairly optimistic if we can get through all of this, and that there aren't major disruptions to the global economy, that things will continue as they are, I should say. The fuel is down, yields are up, so it's for the first time in our we have the opportunity to actually make a decent return on our investment. Doesn't happen often in our business, but nevertheless, things are looking good at the moment. But hey ho, anything can happen.
How are you seeing traffic coming from India? Have any patterns changed?
No, not at all. I think we have to suffer. Our biggest single problem is dealing with the demand for the seats that we have, because they've been restricted for 10 years. And yet the demand for India, certainly to places like Dubai, has grown exponentially. So that's a high-class problem, actually. And of course, it means that the fares are going to be that much higher because supply is restricted. The Indian market in the last 20 or 30 years has really transformed itself into a very robust, both inwards and outwards. And the Indian economy, certainly under this government, has moved ahead quite at pace, where it's trying to engage in the global economy in a much more measured way, but more expansive way than it ever did before. But to do that, part of the equation of getting that right is you've got to have access in and out of your country. So the wealth multiplier that is created by air access is known to most countries. It doesn't make any sense to me to kind of restrict that, and the Indian population suffers as a result of that. So if you want to open your country, if you want it to be a main player in the global economy, certain things have got to be done to make that work. After all, the Indian economy has expanded in all sorts of areas successfully. So air transport needs to be part of that.
Since we are talking about India, Indian carriers are expanding internationally. And since we already have a restriction on seats, do you see the share that you have on the Indian traffic getting impacted there?
It's always a question of the restrictions on what will happen to Emirates. What the Indian carriers need to concentrate really on is doing the thing that they could do very easily, which is open up their global markets. If this has an effect on Emirates, so be it. But after all, Emirates has been restricted for 10 years. We've grown our business globally. We are much larger than we were when those restrictions were put in place. In fact, last year we had the highest profits we've ever made. That's without India contributing as much as it used to. So clearly the global markets are there for all, and there's no reason why the Indian carriers, whether it be Indigo or Air India, shouldn't be able to make a go of it without having to worry about whether they go over Dubai or not. The fact is that Dubai is a very, very significant market in itself. And if you talk to the Indian population and the Indian carriers themselves, with their hands on the heart, they'll say it's probably the most potent external market city that they have on the network. And all we've done is suppress it. So if today we had where we need to be, instead of having between Dubai and India 65,000 seats in each direction per week, today that could be more than 2.5 times the size of that. Think what the Indian carriers would get out of that. Huge amounts. And that would fuel the income they need to make the investments they need for large aircraft and to go further. And have they got the capability of doing it? Yes, they have. So
from 65,000, where should it be
to me,
for the time being?
You know, on the rate we were growing, it would be 200,000 now. That's where it would be.
That's the potential.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yes.
And you'd fill that as well. And the Indian carriers would get 100,000 of those instead of 33. And they would do very well out of it. More points into India for everybody. So, you know, with more capacity, better products, etc. Honestly, it's a no-brainer.
There's always been resistance from the Indian side. You've mentioned this in the past conversations as well. Any more talks with the Indian government that you're having?
I'm not aware of that at the moment. I just hope it's not just about Dubai and Emirates, etc. It's about the other carriers, whether it be the European carriers, the Asian carriers. They all want a piece more in India. Equally, the Indian carriers want access to their markets, but you won't get that if you restrict access to your own. So maybe the powers that be here in this country will kind of realize that at some point we've got to give ground on this. And after all, why are they doing it? Why would they? Is this to protect Air India? Is it to protect? But protection is the worst form of subsidy, if you can call it that. It doesn't do the carriers any favors because they become very complacent in the way they go about their business. There's absolutely no reason why Air India, Indigo, whoever, shouldn't be 4 times the size it is today. And as you can see, these great plans that Air India has put in place, hundreds of airplanes come into play, they realize the potential.
So we spoke about orders placed by Indigo and Air India, but while the demand has bounced back, there is shortage of supply. How bad is it?
It's chronic. It really is chronic. I mean, it's all very well for us to make these huge orders, hundreds and hundreds, but at the back of your mind, you know that they can't even get certain aircraft out of the door by the end of next year, they being the manufacturers. So these are very aspirational orders, and we all face it. We're hugely competitive, but we talk about the difficulties of getting the assets we need, both in terms of the new assets and then be able to support them in the supply chain. And it's the biggest single common factor of concern that the airline industry has is this.
So definitely it is constraining capacity expansion, but how are you then managing and mitigating these issues?
Well, because a lot of the aeroplanes that we were going to retire, we retained. Secondly, we refurbished them completely. So as you would do a hotel, we gutted them and are rebuilding the interiors. That's going on as we speak. We've got 220 aircraft going through that, from the 380s to the 777s. Into those aeroplanes are coming new products. Premium economy, the new business class cabin, the upgraded first class cabin, new bar on the 380, etc. So we were able to stabilize the line. So whereas they were coming out, the new aircraft were coming in, they didn't come in, so we just kept going. So the fleet has been in and around 260 for a year or so now. Now we have a line of 350s coming in, 65 of those. We've got 6 already. They're not exactly on time, but they're helping. So we can manage. But as I've often said, Emirates could be twice the size it is today had we had everything that we needed in place. The demand is that strong. Yeah.
OEMs definitely blame the supply chain issues. But when you talked about refurbishment, how is it being funded? Is it Emirates, or are you taking compensation? There were reports that you're taking compensation.
No. Look, in the end, the most important thing is you've got to refurbish them. We have $5.5 billion allocated to that of our own cash. And to be quite honest, if you penalise the supply chain through punitive damages, you'll just push them out of business completely. There has to be a grown-up conversation when it's all over as to the effect it's had on the business. But in the end, you've got to get on with the job. There's no point sort of sitting back saying, how can I get $10 from him so I can pay $10 to her for whatever it may be. It doesn't work like that. You've got to take control, recognise the shortfall of all these things and get it going, which is what we've done.
So what is the outlook for 2025 in terms of delivery of planes? How much are you expecting?
Well, we were meant to have about 17 350s coming in the course of this year. We've got 6 so far. If we get the 17, I'll be surprised. But hopefully, you never know, things may work out. And then a stream of 777s the back end of next year or the beginning of the following year. Can we manage? Of course we can manage. The network is robust, it's strong, it's profitable.
Etihad CEO Antonoaldo Neves is dealing with similar frustration. Despite robust demand, Etihad is stuck at 176 flights per week, and he warns that if India doesn't open up, they will deploy the capacity elsewhere in Europe and Asia.
We have this network that is, I would say, very balanced. Every time we have a political uncertainty on one side, the other side does better. It compensates one for the other. So I would say that as of now, we don't see any kind of issues in our forward booking curves.
So how are things in India then? Last time we spoke, we were at 176 flights. Are we still there?
We are, because we cannot add more flights.
Yeah.
But the news is that now the Indian carriers also, they cannot add more because they have used all the traffic rights available. Because last time we spoke, the Indian carriers were not there yet. And you see how they're doing well, right? I mean, our competition is flying more destinations from India to Abu Dhabi than we're flying to India. Right?
So since capacity for you is restricted here, what other ways are you exploring then to tap the demand, the rising demand in India?
We're adding a lot in Europe and in Southeast Asia. So
but nothing in India.
No, because we can't. But that's what I think is going to change, right? Because reality is, what is the most scarce resource in the aviation industry today? Airplanes.
Capacity.
Airplanes.
So that is going to be my next question.
So there's a fight for capacity, right?
So IATA also has projected that 2025 deliveries will be about 1,600 plus, suggesting that capacity expansion is going to be constrained for many airlines. How bad it is going to be for you?
No, actually it's going to be good for us, right? Because if I don't get seats in India, I'm going to put that capacity somewhere else, right? So we're in a good position. My point is, I think countries are starting to think differently about capacity and about constraints. Because if the constraint is the plane, there is a fight. Countries are fighting to get flights. Fighting, paying subsidies and paying incentives. So I think India is going to open up for more seats in the future because there are no planes. And then if you don't open up, you're not going to get those planes. You see what I mean? So I'm excited about the future. And when India gives us a little bit more seats, we're going to be adding more capacity. And if we don't get that soon, we're going to be adding other places. And we fly to Southeast Asia, we fly to China, we fly to Europe, we fly to the Middle East, a lot of flying in the Middle East. So it's a good market.
So what is your current operating fleet currently, and
100,
what is
about 100 planes?
So what is your expectation then from the delivery perspective in 2025? How many aircraft are you expecting?
We still have about 20 planes to come. So we're going to be getting about one plane every week for the next 6 months.
EgyptAir chairman and CEO Ahmed Adel is bullish on India and wants to deploy more capacity on Indian routes. He said that the current India-Egypt bilateral air traffic rights stands at 60% utilization and he wants to take that to 100%. He also spoke about the ambition of expanding into the North American markets.
Well, India is a very important market for us in EgyptAir. We have flights to New Delhi and we have flights to Mumbai. We have 4 flights weekly to New Delhi and we are looking to expand that and increase the capacity.
Okay, so how much of the bilateral air traffic rights are you utilizing currently?
We are utilizing almost 60 to 70% of the bilateral agreement and we're looking to utilize 100%, of course, when we receive our new aircrafts.
Okay, I was about to ask you about capacity because flying more will require you to have more planes. So where do you stand in terms of delivery of aircraft?
We are very excited. We are expected to receive 50 new aircrafts starting December 2025 all through 2026. And we have extended the lease on 5 of our 777-300ERs for another 18 months. So we should be good in capacity starting first quarter of 2026.
So what will that take your fleet to? What is your current operating fleet?
We are now at 65 aircrafts.
Which is a mix of?
Excuse me?
It's a mix of?
It's a mix of Boeing and Airbus aircrafts. So we have 320s and 321s, and we have 777-300s and 787s. And 737 NGs.
And what you have ordered includes?
We have firm order of 10 350-900s and 18 737 Maxes.
Okay, so you want to fly more ultra long haul and long haul?
Yes, we want to expand our network in capacity, frequency, and opening new routes.
How are you seeing the overall aviation market globally? You are seeing more uncertainties. Are there any markets where you're seeing problems?
Well, right now we are very bullish on the aviation market. We are seeing growth in the Egyptian market in the next year and 2 years, so all through 2027. We have seen growth in the past 2 years. We did very well in the past 2 years, and in this fiscal year we are expecting to do even better. So we are very excited.
In 2025, what does EgyptAir has to offer in terms of new destinations, new flights?
Well, we are not opening new destinations in 2025 because, as I mentioned to you, we are awaiting the delivery of our aircrafts to exercise all our options in the network. But we have very good movement in and out of Egypt, so we are happy with this year.
Okay. Are you focusing on any markets in the long term?
Well, in the long term, we will be focusing on the North American market, so we're looking to also increase our capacity and frequency in North American markets. And when we receive all of our fleet, the wide-body aircrafts, we are looking into opening new points there.
In terms of uncertainties, geopolitical uncertainties, what is your view on how it impacts aviation, global aviation, customer confidence in flying? We also had many air accidents this year. The start of the year was not very good for the aviation industry. Plus there are geopolitical conflicts, there is weather-related uncertainties. Do you think the vulnerability index has gone up for airlines?
Well, as you mentioned, about aircraft accidents, aviation is still the safest means of transportation in the world. So I understand that people get startled when they hear about accidents, but still the rate is very, very safe. So this is on that side. On the side of geopolitical disturbances or the volatility in the aviation industry, as you know, the aviation industry has proven its resilience throughout the years. So we are very confident that it will maintain its resilience, and it will, whatever problems happen, we know we can deal with it and come out stronger.
So the message from IATA AGM 2025 is clear. Airlines are seeing demand return and profits grow, but they are being held back by aircraft shortages and market access restrictions. So while India is being celebrated as a model for aviation-led economic growth, leaders are calling for bold reforms and open skies. In Delhi, with video journalist Balbir Singh, this is Madeeha Mujhawar for CNBC-TV18.